Welcome, beautiful soul. It's time to remember who we are. You were born for this moment, this breath. Nature teaches us and reminds us that whatever it is that we are searching for, that whatever our hearts and souls are longing for, we must know our unlimited power and worth. It's all already within us. So thank you for saying yes to this moment. Thank you for saying yes to this journey. And most of all, thank you for saying yes to yourself. Welcome, beautiful soul. Welcome, beautiful soul. I am so grateful to have you with us today. Thank you so much for making time and space to share. Our topic is a beautiful one. It touches on that heart center. What is my authentic love story? I have a phenomenal guest for us today. Her name is Jessica or Jessie Otitigbe, and she is amazing. She is the person who literally held space for me to accomplish writing my first book. She's a storyteller. She is a woman who really knows what it means to live her life by listening to her heart song. We're going to get to her in just a moment, but you know we always start with some lovely, delicious breath. So if you are able to safely do so, I invite you to close your eyes. And first, simply notice your breath moving in and out of your nose. No need to change it. We're simply noticing the breath. And this is our time to also give thanks to ourselves for being here, for being alive, for being in this moment. And we also recognize the beautiful gift of breath of life in us, with us, evident all around us. And today, let every breath just nourish our heart center. We want that breath to fill up this place where we connect inwardly to our deepest self. Imagine yourself being nourished and replenished no matter what is going on, no matter what you've gone through. Just imagine beautiful, lovely breath giving you all that you need in this moment. And connect to this moment. Settle our thoughts, our minds from running to what did happen, what might happen, to being right here. Every inhale filling us, every exhale moving through us and releasing all that is no longer needed. And then now let's take 1-5-5-5 breath together. That's just our simple way of inhaling together for 5 seconds, holding it for 5 seconds, and then releasing it together for 5 seconds. So let's go ahead. Nice deep inhale together. And hold it. And then slowly let go. And before you open your eyes, ask yourself, what does your inner heart want you to know? Just check in and see. Something may come to you in this moment, or maybe it'll be revealed later, but just ask your inner heart, what does it want you to know in this moment? We make space for that. And now when you're ready, you can open your eyes if you close them and come back. I always say that breath is so delicious. It's one of my favorite parts to do is to simply breathe. Again, our topic today, what is my authentic love story? We each have a story. We're always writing one. And today I'm excited to introduce our extraordinary guest, um, Jessica Otitigbe. She also goes by Jessie. She is a storyteller. She has created her own storytelling company. She held space for me to somehow birth my first book. And I'm so grateful for her creating beautiful space for that. So, Jessie, welcome today.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Me too. Now, people may not understand the power of connection. And I just have to say that um, I have connected with, and you'll hear me go back and forth, just by the way, if you're listening, from Jessica to Jessie. So having a name like Michanda, this is the backstory. I love to give people their full name because for years people kept saying, "Don't you have a nickname?" That is so long growing up that people couldn't say Michanda. They would mispronounce it, misspell it. And so
Right.
because of that, I think that is why I love to say the full name. And yet Jessica also goes by Jessie. So sometimes you might hear me use that as well. Um, what is so amazing is that when we met, it was through another phenomenal woman, and I hope that one day you get to meet her too, Dr. Deborah Nazone, and she is an ecological economist. And this the small story. So relatives knew her from way back when. I met her when my youngest son was a freshman in college at upstate New York. Later, she's like, "You've got to meet this phenomenal woman, Jessica." And when we did, she's like, "Let's start a writing group." We started a writing group. And somehow I was able to birth my book. We'll get to that in a moment. But
Yeah.
first, what I want Jessica to share with us is, best you can, what would you say are some of the highlights that have helped you connect to your authentic story of heart, of love, of presence? What helped you connect to your own story?
That's a really good question. I'll try to answer it in the space and time that we have. And I feel like this conversation will continue again in another space. I think for me, correction, I believe that for me, it was really just coming to terms with I was turning 50 and I felt like I needed to have a better understanding of myself. And that also included really having a heart talk with myself as well in terms of my thoughts and feelings and how I see myself. I know that we always talk about our younger versions of ourselves and what that was like growing up in so many different spaces and in different places as well. And sometimes it's hard as you get older to really have that honest conversation with yourself to say, what am I going to do to show myself more love? And what does self love look like? And what is it going to feel like? And as I started that journey and that exploration, a lot of it was really connected to different types of experiences. What are some of the things that I want to feel? What are some of the things that I want to experience? And in terms of feeling, I know that one of the things that came to mind, two words, peace and joy. And for me, that always meant immersing myself in natural settings. So I would probably say I started hiking and walking. So that was my walking practice. And I felt like in those moments of walking, and especially I love walking early in the morning, and regardless of the season, I committed myself during that time period. And I realized that I was hearing so much of what was in my heart and also what was in my mind. And I think that just gave me extra courage
Mm.
to not feel like I had to be silent about things that I wanted or things that I wanted to experience. And that's kind of how it started.
I think that's so powerful and so beautiful. Some of the key words I'm hearing you talk about are peace, joy, courage, all part of you connecting with who am I, yourself, and self love. And of course, you and I are big fans of like being out in nature. And I always recommend it to people like, oh my gosh, is it not the most healing?
It is.
The most healing. So something else that I remember, because we talk so often, you all, and it's amazing. Like the discussions about everything under the sun. And so
Yeah.
something that I love that you said for yourself as you were on this commitment to look at yourself and to be able to give yourself deeply what you want, to listen, to know it. What would you say is the contrast from, because I want to get to that in a moment, but first I want to back up and say, what was the contrast where maybe earlier in your life there wasn't this assertion, this decision to connect and give yourself what it is that deep down your inner heart wanted?
You know, there are so many reasons why. I think that when you think about life, and when I think and reflect on my life, I'm a mom, a present parent, I'd like to say, in the sense that, I was raising my daughter as a single parent, although her father and I are very, very great friends, and he's very actively involved. And I had a village. I have a village. I have my mom, my siblings, and a mix of friends. It's still different when you're doing that on your own, in a way. And I think that for me, at some point, there's a point where you start to look at your life and you start to think about, what other legacies am I going to leave behind for my family and my friends? My daughter is off at school. She's at Harvard. She's in her senior year. And I started thinking that I would also love to be able to experience a love legacy and have that also be something that she can see as well and experience as well. And I think sometimes in life we begin to question at different points. I know I was, whether or not that kind of love story with a life partner can happen. Oftentimes we're so immersed in being there for ourselves and others that sometimes we feel that we're not deserving of that experience. We're not deserving of, a next step, or we're not deserving of different types of moments, because we may feel that we're bogged down with all these responsibilities. And we are. I wouldn't say bogged down, but we have these responsibilities, and we are. And sometimes it almost makes you feel guilty that you want to experience more, because you kind of sit back and look and say, I should just be happy with what I have right now. I don't have the time to immerse in pursuing a relationship or doing something different, or maybe pursuing an alternate career. I have to be happy with this specific space. And I think for me, I started thinking about, well, what if I want more? And it's okay to want more. And there's nothing
Mm.
selfish with wanting more. And as a woman, I think that's something that sometimes it's hard for us to come to terms with, that I feel oftentimes society and others have made it seem it's selfish if you want more, but we also deserve
Wonderful.
to have more. And so I deserve
Yes.
to have more. And I feel like that was a mindset shift that I needed to acknowledge for myself.
I mean, yes, and yes, and yes. I hope all of you who are listening today that this is touching you in the same way that, I mean, Jesse and I have talked about this. See, I used Jesse that time. We've talked about this,
I
and
answered
I
to
still love hearing it. I still love hearing it because we're aware that if we're not conscious and connected to who we are, it's so easy to let outer messages define and describe our path, and then therefore narrow it and narrow this legacy. And I love that part, because we've been told your value, especially when it comes to those of us who are parenting, who are caring for others, that our value is in the caring for others,
Mhm.
and that we're not allowed this beautiful space of caring for ourselves. And then, even beyond caring for ourselves, diving into what is it deep down that we want. That, I always say that however I grew up, like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this idea of desire seemed so so isolated from who I was and how I was taught to be, that I really wasn't allowed to explore that. Like, that was like the most selfish thing you can do is like dive into your own desire that you're
Mhm.
here for other people, and then to like reconnect and find our way back to understanding that we do and we are valuable and we are worthy of acknowledging and receiving what it is deep down that we desire, that those wants, those desires can be so beautiful and so lovely when we give ourselves space to believe that we're deserving of them, and
Mhm.
we are also able to, take care of others and our responsibilities. The big and is that there's room for us.
Right. Yeah, that's so true. And that's interesting too, because as you say that, sometimes I feel in some way we also feel that we need permission for that like next step, that experience. And I still remember I carry this letter with me all the time that my daughter gave me her first year in school. And it was around Columbus Day weekend. And it was actually, and that was actually like the first weekend that I was on this ladies trip to Martha's Vineyard, my next happy place. And I remember my mom was saying, your daughter's going to be home for Columbus Day weekend, which is now Indigenous Peoples Weekend. And I said, I know, but I've told her about this like months in advance that when you come home like this break, and I know it's your first break, I'm going to be away for the weekend. And that has been a consistent thing, like during the fall, to travel with a group of friends to Martha's Vineyard during the month of October. And I remember she gave me this letter, and the letter ended with sort of this line where she talked about, I hope you find joy. I hope you find satisfaction. I hope you find happiness. Because being your kid, I found all three. And I read that letter often, and I always hone in on those last few words, because it was almost as if there was an understanding that I know that you've sacrificed and done so much for me. And now I hope that you'll take some time for yourself too. And I
That's
think,
just so well, I'm sorry, keep going, keep going.
and every time I think about it, again, I know that, we can say that we don't necessarily need permission from family or friends, but correction. And in some ways that may be true. At the end of the day, in some way, my daughter has been, we've been attached to the hip, and we still will be. Here's 17, 18 years of being under the same roof, and this beautiful person telling me, I want you to go and enjoy your own life too. And
I
for
mean,
me,
that's just the best. Oh, I'm sorry. You know how I do this. We do this all the time. So
and,
today I'm good
and
behave because
like
we have other listeners.
I'm thinking about it, and it's making me teary eyed, because to have that depth of compassion and willingness to share that, I'm a very lucky person with my daughter. I love her to the moon and back. And I think in some way that sparked my desire to start to go on a limb and start to see, like, what adventures does Jesse want to go on? What pursuits will I explore, and do so unapologetically, because this is my time.
Beautiful. So beautiful. And I love that your daughter was able to capture that as a freshman in
Mhm.
college, and already, and here she is a senior, has been able to like see this whole progression throughout her life, that your steady love has been there, and you're modeling for her and showing her the beauty of when we make space to love and take care of ourselves, despite those really, deep grooves of outer messaging that tell us that should wait and be on the back burner. And then what happens when we wait is we're out of practice. And
Mhm.
then it's like a whole new trip in a foreign land to
Yeah.
come back and find out who we are. And I say that first person. I'm not sure it was just the taking care of sons. I'm sure that's part of it for me. It's so many other messages, I think, that made coming home to what my heart is saying a trip in a foreign land like, is what it felt like, to make my way back to, well, what is my heart saying? What do I want? And knowing there's a beautiful and there's nothing selfish about it. And it's the best gift of legacy we can give to another generation to learn. Please love and take care of yourself. How can we possibly truly love other people deeply if we're neglecting the love that is so important for ourselves? And this love story is about to expand. So if you're listening, please just strap in, because we haven't even touched the
No,
iceberg
no.
of her love story. We're just getting into this. So, I love something that you shared when I was with you, witnessing, you going deeper in your own love story. And you talked about a season of yes. And I would love for you to expound, because I think that's such an integral part before we get to the amazing part of your love story. I want you to talk about this season of yes, because I think that was so key to
Mm.
everything else that began to unfold for you.
Oh, for sure. So, I feel that there are two parts. One part that I think is also important in this narrative is that we can't necessarily have this conversation with also acknowledging that as a Black woman, so often we are raised and society has us feeling that we need to carry on the strong Black woman narrative. And I've seen it in so many different situations and circles where it is exhausting, to the point that individuals are exhausting themselves to tiredness and illness in so many different ways. And I think for me, it was one of those things where I said, I have to understand that there's no weakness in asking for help. There's no weakness in saying that I'm too tired to do something. There's no weakness in taking rest. And there's no weakness in saying no. And those are some of the things that I had to relearn for myself going through this journey. And then one of the things that I started thinking about, and this is in my season of surrender and the season of saying yes, as I said, I'd continue to say yes to new experiences and opportunities and connections until it no longer seemed to serve me. And sometimes saying yes might mean taking me out of my comfort zone. Sometimes saying yes might mean interacting in different spaces or pursuing different experiences that I typically would never have considered, just because it didn't seem like it was something that I would, be interested in. And I started to realize that in saying yes, there were so many things that I had been missing out on just because of a lack of willingness to try something new. I'll give an example. I started following all these outdoor platforms so that I could make connections with different groups. And I heard about a forest bath. No clue what that meant. I think naturally someone would think, okay, you're going to take a bath in a forest. And I read it and I was like, oh, this seems like something that would be really interesting to do. And they only offered it twice a year. And so I remember this particular Saturday for this activity, I was running around doing all these errands. And at some point I said, I have to stop because I need to get to this location. This experience starts at this time. I cannot miss it because the next one is going to be like several months from now. And so I met with this group of individuals somewhere in the woods. I think the location was somewhere in the Slingerlands. I'm in upstate New York. And it was 3 hours of just kind of walking to different places that the guide had selected and pausing and breathing and going through some guided meditations, getting some reflection prompts and different exercises as well during this sort of 3-hour experience. And I'm so glad that I did that. One, because again, it was creating that opportunity to be outdoors. Two, it was also creating that opportunity to learn different ways of interacting with natural spaces. And then next, it was also creating that opportunity to really go inward and really listen to what my heart and mind was thinking about at that time. And yeah, I think saying yes sometimes can be a challenge, but taking that time to say yes to different experiences, I feel just opens a door to conversations, connections that may not have crossed your path if you continue to kind of stay in your comfort zone and space.
So powerful. And if you're taking notes, then you know that Jessica has talked about how saying no to things can be a form of self love and so important. She's telling us, hello, ask for help is not a weakness, it is a point of strength. And that when it's time to say yes to what is unfolding for us in our season, in each season, to be prepared to be pulled out of our comfort zone, to be prepared to need a little bit of courage, and still keeping this North Star of self love, of peace, of joy, of nurturing ourselves are all things that I think are so beautiful and lovely that we have learned. And the more we talk about it, we can teach other people how to make that their natural state as opposed to a state that they have to feel like is brand new and then come into. I mean, I know for myself, it definitely was a new place to come. And yet, my deepest inner self always knew that this is exactly my home, to be able to love self, to be able to give self time to rest, to say no, to ask for help, and to stretch and take a leap of courage, knowing that we're going to be okay. All right,
Yeah.
it's time to dive in because you know what? Normally we talk for like, I don't know, easily 2.5 hours. So we
Yes.
don't have that time today. So I
So
need
we,
to now jump to these questions that you began, I don't even know, more intentions, I would say they were. Like these
yeah.
intentions, they're so powerful. I've used them with my clients. Jessica knows this. I want you to really deeply listen to the intentions that she set for herself and how they ended up manifesting. So go ahead, because this part is just so beautiful. And so, like, she probably needs to be on TED Talk for this. So listen to these intentions and then listen to what she created for herself because of these intentions.
So, I'd said this before that, excuse me, I think you get to a certain age and you start to wonder if you can have a love story for yourself. I'm 50, 51 now. And I remember thinking to myself, what is my love story going to look like? And there's also a bit of that envy when you see individuals in some way that are younger than you, and it seems like it's so easy to be able to make a connection and to find someone. And so there's that challenge of coming out of the comfort zone to say, what spaces will I be willing to put myself in to make a connection? And so online dating was was the option, at the time. And the other part of that was that I felt like I also needed to be intentional when I was thinking about pursuing my person and what that would feel like and what that would be like. And I think the first thing that came to mind, often you're thinking about all sorts of different qualities and characteristics that you want, and physical features and attributes and values, and all those things are all very important. And I feel like the first thing that came to my mind is I wanted peace. And I say this in the sense too, because I've been single for over 20 years as I was raising my daughter. And so I know that jumping into the dating scene is going to be a lot different. And the first thing that came to my mind is I wanted peace.
Yes.
And what did that peace feel like? To me, it felt like whether I was in the person's presence or not, my mind wasn't going to be jumping through hoops and wondering, how do they feel about me? What are they thinking? And that to me was very important.
Yes.
Again, we know when we're talking with friends and others going through the dating process, there's always that space of uncertainty where you're kind of wondering, how does this person feel about me? Certain words are not communicated or said when you meet. And so then your mind starts creating all these narratives. And I said, I just don't want to do that. I don't want to create narratives. My mind is already overactive as it is. I don't need to add to it any more than I already have. And that was the most important thing. And then I think I also started thinking about, and I had a journal actually, and I would just kind of write some of these thoughts that they would come to my mind. And another time I was thinking about, someone who's eager to see me and hesitant to leave.
Yes, yes.
Oftentimes, when individuals are thinking about their connections, sometimes they're saying, I don't want someone that's going to be clingy. I need to have my life. I understand that. I need to have my space. Some individuals will say that. I don't need someone that's like texting me all the time or calling me all the time. And yeah, in some spaces, yes, I can understand that that can be a lot and overwhelming for some individuals. And I'm not going to negate that in some unfortunate circumstances, some individuals have necessarily abused the opportunity of connecting with someone, and it has become, a stalker situation or things like that. So, I think I use that term more in the sense for me that I really wanted someone that would be excited to want to spend time with me, as I would feel
Yes,
about him.
yes, yes,
And that to me was important. And whether it's time together at home or doing different types of activities, I just think that that's important. So that was another thing that, I had in the back of my mind, as well, that I wrote down. And, I kind of just put it to the side and let it go. And, there are other things that came up just in terms of, I think I use this sentence a couple of times when we've had conversations, that I wanted to feel vulnerable enough to have conversations about anything and everything, that
hmm
even with my clothes on, I could still feel naked and safe and vulnerable,
yes.
with sharing anything and everything. And I think that's important.
Yes,
And
I'm going to help you out because Jessica's being
I
modest
think
here.
that
And I'm going to help you. I'm going to help her out because I took notes. If you're watching, you can see I'm reading from my notes because when I first heard
perfect,
these intentions,
because I
I
couldn't
I am going to read them because you'll
please
hear the
do.
poetry in her words. She said that she was looking for a life partner who would be eager to see me and hesitant to leave me, comfortable in silence and still having a conversation, to feel safe, seen, and heard, and connected through vulnerability, being able to share and say anything without judgment, knowing that each of us is on a healing journey, knowing that healing would take place in the relationship and continue, knowing that we are here to be healed and have a relationship. Practicing the vulnerability, someone who says, I want to hear what you have to say, even when I am tempted to shut down due to a trigger from the past of an old relationship that had us feeling judged. Standing in front of you, and you heard her say this one, I love this one, standing in front of you naked, but still having my clothes on because I feel clothed, that I can still say yes and move forward with trust. Creating a love legacy to leave behind so that our
Mhm.
next generation gets to see the whole process of discovery and love. And knowing that the success and growth we want can really only happen collectively in true relationship. I
I'm
think
glad you
that's just
that.
beautiful.
I'm glad you captured all of that.
Of course, I told you I share this with clients because I think we've been taught to have these walls up.
Yeah.
We've been taught to hold our cards close to our chest because we're all scared of being hurt. And
Mhm.
I ask everybody this: if you've been hurt, raise your hand, because
Mhm.
I don't think anybody gets to go through this journey without being hurt. And if the price of protecting our heart is higher than having our heart open, then we'll never really have love.
Mhm. It's true.
And that's scary. However, when we let these intentions be true and unfold, there's a gift there.
Mhm.
There's a gift waiting for us when we have the courage to say yes to ourselves and then yes to someone else.
Yeah.
And so here's the kicker, because we're, rounding the corner towards the end.
Yeah.
Jessica used these intentions. They were true in her heart. And then lo and behold, while she was with her daughter in Scotland, what happens?
I got a message from someone named Patrick, and he, sent me a message and said, I really, enjoyed reading your profile. That's a profile that I can sink my teeth into. And he ended it by saying, like, romance aside, I know that I'm going to enjoy getting to know you. I'm a sucker for words. I love a man that can write.
And right, he did, and live
Yeah.
up to those words, he did. And
Mhm.
that was in August. Was it
That
not somewhere in
was
August when you were in Scotland? Because I remember we were like scheduling our writing group around
yes.
her being in Scotland.
Yeah.
So she was still leading our writing group through this. That's why we were like front and center when this was all unfolding. And then you
Yeah.
come back from Scotland, and then now what?
I came back from Scotland. Well, I was in Scotland, and we were just kind of texting back and forth. And
Mhm.
after probably like a couple of days, I just gave him my number because it was hard to log in to the app to keep getting updates. And so then we just continued texting back and forth throughout the time that I was in Scotland. He also, at some point in his life, had traveled across Europe. So it was nice to kind of share some snapshots of some of the places that I was visiting in Scotland as well. Got back to Albany and we made plans to meet up. And our first date was probably like 7 or 8 hours. I said I would love a man who plans, because sometimes it takes me a while to like figure out like, okay, what do I want to do? It's like I feel like I want to do anything and everything. And we pretty much went from axe throwing to grabbing a meal nearby to listening to some music at an outdoor venue for our first date. And there were a lot of conversation, just a lot of talking throughout that whole entire time. And a couple of days later, I remember he sent me a message and asked me if I like bread. And who doesn't love homemade bread? And so he made me a loaf of sourdough bread. And at the time, I was teaching at a college in the area. And so he delivered this loaf of sourdough bread to campus for me. And we just continued talking about so many different things. And there was this comfort in being not feeling afraid to share anything and everything. And
Yes.
and I think that's the other part. Sometimes we feel like there are different parts of ourselves that we have to hold back from sharing. There are different parts that we feel intimidated about sharing because we don't know whether or not the person is going to be ready to accept all of those parts of who we are. And I don't feel like we had any of those issues. I mean, a month into the connection, we knew that it wasn't just going to be something casual. We knew that it was going to be something long term. And I remember in October, he met my mom and told my mom, I love your daughter, and I want your blessing to marry her.
Did you all hear that? He asked for her mother's blessing to get married. And mind you, yes, she was in her, you were 50, and he still wanted to honor that relationship. Keep going.
And in December, he asked me to marry him, and I said yes. And then we tried to like say, okay, how are we going to plan this like whirlwind wedding and all these other things? And along the way, also too, having conversations with my daughter, because again, this is a space where it's like you just met. How do you know? It's only been
Yes.
a few months. And everyone's story and experience can be different. I feel that for us, there were so many vulnerable conversations that we had in the very beginning of our connection that it just seemed to fit. And there wasn't any doubt in my mind. Like there was never a moment where I felt like I needed to say no to something. And kind of going back to, what I said earlier, it's like I'll keep saying yes until I find a reason to say no. And I could
And
only keep saying yes.
you kept saying yes, and then we're almost to a beautiful time in the year for you.
Yeah.
And so tell us that, I mean, of course, today we're actually doing this, gathering at a special time, but March is a significant time for you. And I want you to tell us why.
So we got married in March. March 11th is going to be our 1 year wedding anniversary. As we were trying to figure out wedding planning, Patrick literally, I remember, sent me a text one day and said, "Why don't we go to Vegas?" And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea. And so our wedding ended up being a quick trip to Vegas. I think the beautiful part about it, he had close friends from here that came down for the wedding. His mom and an uncle and his aunt who live in California were able to attend. So it was a short drive for them. And my daughter was our witness. And so she flew in from Boston and was the witness at our wedding. And then I also had my sister who lives in California who also joined us for the wedding as well, in front of a pink Cadillac.
So only a storyteller would have a wedding fit for film, literally, that she is in Scotland. I mean, this is like a Hallmark movie. You get a text, a message in Scotland, you're communicating, you keep the communication going. Lo and behold, he asks you, can I make you some bread? What woman would say no to that? You have
Yeah.
sourdough bread brought. That's just one. I mean, she has stories for days of all of his tender acts of, compassion and consideration for her, for your family, for your daughter. And I love how you all made space to ask questions of each other, to
Mhm.
answer questions. And because we're running short on time and it's time to begin to wrap this up, I want you to tell yourself, your younger self, let me be more specific, what you would want it to know when it's going through that season, because many of us may still be there.
Mhm.
Others can be able to relate to it. But what would you want your younger self to know
Mhm.
when it was wondering, is there love for me?
Mhm. I feel like the best version of yourself wasn't the only one who deserved to be loved, and that all of you deserve to be loved. And you didn't realize it then. You realize it now.
Yes. Yes, I mean, that's the most powerful moment, is this now moment. We're going to obviously have to have Jessica back because we didn't even get to her passion about storytelling and how someone who didn't think she had a book, meanly me, was able, because of her beautiful caretaking guidance, help me write my first book. But you see her own book that she's writing, a story of love. And that's the story that I think we're all deep down searching for, because on a spiritual level, we're all energy.
Mhm.
We're all called and connected through this beautiful experience of light and love, and yes, hello, peace and joy. And it requires courage to live connected to all of that instead of trading all of that for a reduced version
Mhm.
that this world sometimes tells us to go chase a title, go
Mhm.
chase the external, go
Mhm.
chase what other people think you should have, listen to everyone else's opinion, and let that be the deciding factor. All of these inverted messages that we are constantly being, um, you know, absorbed with, and needing to again set a new definition for ourselves about, no, who this is, who I really am. And here's who I'm really listening to, which ultimately is going back to our inner heart, our inner truth, our inner soul, our inner spirit, whatever word you want to use. And so I'd like to end with giving you an opportunity to share what's the wisdom that you believe is important for any of us who are wanting to expand and live from a place of truth according to our inner heart.
I would most likely say that the most beautiful thing that you can do for yourself is to speak your truth. It can be scary. It's uncomfortable. But at the end of the day, your silence isn't going to serve anyone. And all those ideas and thoughts that you have in your heart and mind are just going to languish and disappear. So in this space and time where you have breath, use that as an opportunity to share whatever you have to say. And in some way, I feel that that helps you to have some sense of peace. And maybe all those connections and opportunities that you're looking for as you're sharing more and speaking more of your truth will come into your life as they need to.
So beautiful. So beautiful. So fitting for all of us today here on Beautiful Soul. I hope that those of you who were able to join us and listen were able to feel infused with her lovely, just soft and powerful, because that's what I think of when I think of Jessica. Soft, this compassion and this power of what it means to come back and connect to who we really are, to honor who we really are, and to walk that journey with courage, with consciousness, with intention. So I thank you all for joining us. I thank you especially, Jessica Otitigbe, for being here. We have to have her back to talk about all the other talents that she has, how she helps people usher out a book who didn't think they had a book. We thought we were going to start there today, but this love story really takes center stage because each of us is writing our own story. We're living our own story. Every breath, every choice, every decision, every intention, we're writing our story. And it's time that we write one worthy of a legacy. And Jessica certainly has. So I thank you today for being with us. I thank you for being exactly who you are. I thank you for saying yes to yourself and yes to being Beautiful Soul.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beautiful Soul, for remembering who we are and for making time and space to be with us today. As you go forward on your journey to the known and unknown places, continue to listen to your inner heart and honor your soul, because your answers are always within you. Please consider supporting us and spreading more light and love with this message by simply liking the video below, subscribing, and consider sharing as well. Most of all, take gentle care and breathe. We see you. We thank you. Beautiful Soul.